Welcome to Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. Today we are discussing Reshaping the Eisenhower Matrix for the Real World, written by Fred James. The classic Eisenhower Matrix, right? Those four little boxes that tell us to sort our professional lives into urgent and important.
Oh, yeah. The golden rule of productivity.
Right. We're taught from like day one in business that if we just tackle quadrant 1, schedule quadrant 2, delegate 3, and delete the rest, we'll achieve some kind of, marketing nirvana.
Sounds amazing in theory.
It does. But let's be real. The second you sit down at your desk and the emails start flooding in,
The whole system just completely falls apart.
exactly, it shatters. So our mission today is to explore Fred James' 5 hidden factors. We want to figure out why this classic tool gets so incredibly messy in the real world, and more importantly, how we can reshape it for our everyday marketing and tech environments.
And the reason it falls apart is actually pretty straightforward, though it's a reality check that a lot of productivity gurus just tend to ignore. Fred James points out a massive critical flaw in the traditional model right from the jump. The entire tool assumes you are, in fact, General Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Right, like you're literally running a war.
Exactly. It's built on the premise that you are this supreme commander sitting at the very top of a vast hierarchy with, an endless army of staff officers waiting to take all those delegated tasks off your plate.
Which would be lovely.
It would be. But in reality, most of us simply don't have that luxury. As a senior manager, I can tell you that just deciding a task is not important doesn't magically erase it from the company's ecosystem. Someone still has to do it.
Yeah, as a frontline marketer, I feel that deeply. I can't just take a really tedious campaign analytics report, toss it in the delegate box, and just assume the marketing fairies are going to handle it.
The marketing fairies are notoriously understaffed.
They really are. Somebody has to do the actual work. So let's get into the publication. We're unpacking these 5 hidden factors that the author identifies, starting with the first one, which is assessment determinants.
Right.
And this addresses the foundational problem of the matrix, which is that urgent and important are not universal truths. They're entirely subjective. What qualifies as a top priority depends heavily on your specific role, your experience, and crucially, your personal life outside the office.
That subjectivity is exactly where the traditional 4 boxes start to break down.
I want to push on that subjectivity for a second because it gets really interesting when you map it to a live tech scenario.
Yeah.
So let's say you're prepping for a massive, high-stakes B2B software pitch.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, you've been refining the slide deck for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
The client is an absolute whale, and the presentation is tomorrow morning.
High pressure.
Huge pressure. So if you look at the rigid classic matrix, finalizing that deck is the ultimate urgent and important task. It's sitting right there at the very top of quadrant 1.
Mm-hmm.
But then your phone rings.
Uh-oh.
It's the school nurse. Your child has suddenly gotten sick and needs to be picked up immediately. In a fraction of a second, that rigid matrix completely shatters.
Because you have personal priorities and professional priorities violently clashing.
Exactly. And a basic 2x2 grid simply cannot tell you whether your sick child or your B2B software pitch is the true priority.
It's a perfect illustration of the limits of a static model. And that subjective nature of importance doesn't just happen when your personal life interrupts. It happens constantly, entirely within the office walls, too.
Oh, for sure.
Consider the dynamic of what we could call the boss factor. Prioritization is almost never an isolated exercise where you just sit alone in a room calling all the shots. Priorities are very often dictated by others.
Yeah, other people's emergencies become your emergencies.
Precisely. A senior executive might hand down a task that feels incredibly urgent to them, but objectively, it might be completely meaningless to your actual marketing goals.
Oh, the artificial crisis. We've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say a VP suddenly wants to know, the historical engagement rate on our Twitter account from 3 years ago.
For a single slide, they probably won't even use in an afternoon board meeting.
Exactly. To me, pulling that obscure data point is completely unimportant to our actual marketing goals for the quarter. I'd normally toss it in quadrant 4 and just ignore it. But because it comes from the boss,
It artificially bypasses the matrix entirely.
right, it forces its way to the top.
And you have to evaluate that carefully. Is pulling that Twitter data important to the quarterly marketing strategy? No. But is it important to maintaining your working relationship with the VP and, frankly, keeping your job?
Yes. Very much yes.
Right. The matrix fails to distinguish between what is important for the project and what is important for the politics of the organization.
That distinction alone ruins the simplicity of those 4 boxes. But it also leads us right into the second hidden factor Fred James brings up, which is Cost.
Yes, cost. And this is a big one.
Usually when we talk about cost in our field, we're talking about, you know, line items on a media budget or customer acquisition metrics, but the author is talking about a much deeper, more personal calculation here.
The text makes a really fascinating argument about how your rank within the management hierarchy fundamentally changes the cost of any given task.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, we're talking about the interplay of time, money, and most importantly, opportunity cost. Fred James uses a very relatable, everyday scenario to explain this. Imagine you need to clean your house because an important guest is visiting tomorrow.
Okay.
Say your girlfriend's mother.
Oh, wow. High stakes for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely categorize that as an urgent situation.
It's extremely urgent.
Right.
But think about how two different people in a marketing department would approach solving that problem. A junior marketer, who is likely living on a tighter personal budget, looks at the financial cost of hiring a professional cleaner as a major burden.
Right. The cash out of pocket is just too high.
Exactly. For them, spending that money is an unacceptable cost, so their only option is to spend their own time scrubbing floors and vacuuming. But if you take a senior marketing director, their mathematical calculation is completely flipped.
Because their time is worth more.
Precisely. The opportunity cost of them spending 4 hours cleaning is simply too high to justify. If that senior director spends 4 hours cleaning the house, they aren't using those 4 hours to review the upcoming quarter's overarching strategy.
Or finalize $1 million media buy.
Or even just getting the rest they need to perform at a high level. For the senior manager, paying someone else to clean the house is the only logical, cost-effective choice. The task itself hasn't changed at all.
It's still just cleaning a house.
Right. But the cost calculation changes entirely based on the person's position, salary, and responsibilities.
Okay, I totally get the underlying economics of the house cleaning, but let's translate that directly to the marketing floor. A task that one person easily delegates, another person is forced to do themselves because they literally can't afford the cost of delegation. The matrix doesn't look at your department's budget or your hourly value to the company. Like, a junior marketer might spend 6 hours manually pulling analytics data because they don't have the budget to buy an automated dashboard tool.
While a senior director would just buy the software without a second thought.
Right, because the 6 hours of lost productivity is way more expensive than the monthly software subscription.
That's a highly accurate translation. The simplified model is just completely blind to those resource constraints.
Yeah.
But, the complications of the real world don't stop at cost. We also have to look at how tasks behave temporally.
How they shift over time.
Yes.
Which brings up the third hidden factor, task flow. And this concept really resonates with me because work in our industry is incredibly dynamic. Tasks don't just sit nicely in their assigned little boxes, waiting patiently for you to get around to them.
Yeah.
They move around constantly.
They do. And the author uses a great example of a boss's phone suddenly losing its internet connection. If we evaluate that task in a vacuum, fixing a smartphone is a standard IT issue. It's an annoyance, certainly, but perhaps not a 5-alarm fire that demands immediate executive attention.
Yeah, normally you just put in a ticket. Let's put that into a high-pressure tech context, though, to see how the flow actually works. Imagine we are 10 minutes into a massive B2C consumer electronics product launch.
Oh, those are stressful.
Super stressful. We're talking about a global live stream with 50,000 concurrent viewers. Top-tier influencers are queued up to post. Our programmatic social media ads are set to trigger. The adrenaline is just pumping across the whole team.
Everything has to go perfectly.
Right. But right at the critical moment, the boss's phone loses its internet connection. Suddenly, they can't log in to approve the final multi-million-dollar promo code push notification that's going out to our entire user base.
The context shifts entirely. In an instant, fixing the boss's phone jumps from being a non-urgent, slightly irritating Quadrant 3 IT ticket all the way to an urgent, high-priority, mission-critical crisis.
It literally flew across the matrix in a matter of seconds.
And as a marketer, you have to adapt instantly. You can't just point to your printed-out Eisenhower grid and say, sorry, fixing phones is a low-priority task. I'll get to it next week after the campaign.
No, you'd be fired.
Exactly. The environment dictates the priority, and the environment is always in flux, which forces us to look at the fourth hidden factor, result assessment.
Result assessment.
This is where we have to look beyond the immediate fire drill and really consider the hidden ripple effects of the choices we make. The author introduces a historical example to explain this, bringing us back to General Eisenhower himself.
Okay, I love a good history tie-in.
Before the massive D-Day invasion, one of the many logistical details Eisenhower personally managed was ensuring the troops were served high-quality, hearty steaks for dinner.
Steaks.
Yes, good steaks.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at a massive, complex military operation, sourcing a good steak seems like an incredibly minor detail compared to, moving armored tank divisions and securing thousands of rounds of ammunition.
On a rigid matrix, you might classify good dinner as not terribly urgent and certainly not structurally important to the tactical battle plan. I could hear the counter-argument already. Like, why is the Supreme Commander wasting time on catering when there's a literal war to plan?
Because Eisenhower understood the hidden layers of result assessment. The text emphasizes that the decision to provide those steaks had a profound, unseen impact on troop morale. Fear was incredibly high, and morale is the invisible fuel of any major operation.
Wow.
That high morale was a critical factor that contributed heavily to the overall success of the D-Day landings. Evaluating the consequence of the task, what it meant to the troops psychologically, proved to be just as vital as evaluating its immediate tactical urgency.
I want to pull that Eisenhower steak example straight into a modern marketing takeaway. Think about a task that feels totally like it belongs in Quadrant 4. Something not urgent, not important, maybe even a little frivolous.
Give me an example.
Let's say organizing the logistics for a team lunch after a really grueling, stressful, month-long product launch.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, as a frontline marketer, when my plate is overflowing with post-campaign data analysis, optimizing ad copy and fielding client emails, stopping to book a restaurant and collect dietary restrictions feels like a massive distraction.
It feels like Quadrant 4.
Exactly. It's so easy to push it off, delay it, or just ignore it completely.
But if you step back and evaluate the potential consequences from a management perspective, that team lunch is absolutely vital.
Just like the steaks.
Just like the stakes. The hidden ripple effect of ignoring your team's morale leads directly to burnout, resentment, high turnover of your best talent, and eventually a massive drop in the quality of the work.
If you don't book the lunch, your lead copywriter might quit next month.
Precisely. Evaluating a task's potential consequence, whether it builds morale or prevents a catastrophic future disaster, is a layer of complexity the basic four-box matrix completely ignores.
So we've covered assessment determinants, cost, task flow, and result assessment. That brings us to the fifth and final hidden factor from Fred James' publication: time.
Time, the great equalizer.
Yeah, and this sparks a really fascinating discussion about how we actually tackle our day-to-day workflow.
The discussion of time management is where the philosophy of the matrix really meets the reality of execution. Because once you know your priorities, however subjective they might be, how do you actually start?
Right.
Do you immediately tackle the massive, intimidating, highly important project, the proverbial eating the frog strategy, or do you spend the first hour of your day knocking out a dozen quick, small tasks to clear your mental desk?
I know so many marketers who swear by the snowball method. They clear the mental desk first. They reply to a few easy emails, approve a minor social post, maybe organize their desktop folders.
It builds momentum.
It does. It psychologically feels good to check things off a list before diving into the deep work.
It feels great, and there's absolute value in that momentum. But the author warns of the inherent compounding risks in leaning too far into either extreme. If you only focus on the major Quadrant 1 tasks, you run the very real risk of completely neglecting the smaller ones, which can backfire spectacularly.
Oh, yeah.
Let's say you spend 3 entire days locked in a conference room writing a massive make-or-break campaign strategy, but you completely ignore your inbox during that time.
Dangerous game.
Very, because you might miss a relatively small, seemingly unimportant compliance update from the legal department.
Oh, I've seen that happen. And because you missed that tiny legal update, the entire massive campaign strategy you just spent 3 days writing is now non-compliant and has to be scrapped.
Exactly. That ignored small task caused massive delays, creating a huge hidden opportunity cost. On the flip side, though, if you only focus on the quick, easy wins to get that dopamine hit of checking boxes, you never make meaningful progress on the long-term strategic projects that actually move the needle for the business.
Time is a hidden cost that compounds rapidly when managed poorly. It's like ignoring a tiny leak in a boat because you're too busy perfectly adjusting the sails. You think you're doing the important work, but eventually that tiny leak becomes your biggest, most urgent problem.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks. So where does this leave us? If the classic four-box matrix is too rigid, too subjective, Blind to financial realities, ignores shifting priorities, misses the ripple effects of morale, and struggles with time management. Do we just throw it out entirely? Is Fred James saying the Eisenhower Matrix is useless for modern marketers?
Not at all. And this is arguably the most valuable insight from the text. We don't discard the tool, we reshape it to fit our reality. The publication introduces a fantastic visual metaphor to help us do this.
Okay, let's hear it.
We need to stop looking at the real-world matrix as four distinct, perfectly segregated black and white boxes. Instead, we should view it as a fluid gradient. It's a continuous spectrum of priorities.
A gradient. I have to push back a little on the gradient idea, though. I get the visual. It implies that a task can be 60% urgent and 40% important, rather than just forcing it into a binary category.
Right.
But doesn't making tasks a 60-40 split just give us an excuse to procrastinate on the hard stuff? If everything is a gray area, how do we actually manage that ambiguity without our day devolving into total chaos?
That's a totally fair critique, and the author addresses that chaos directly. Fred James takes that gradient visual even further to explain how to manage it. The text describes the tasks themselves not as static little sticky notes pinned securely to a corkboard, but rather they run around like mice.
Like mice. That is an incredibly vivid, slightly stressful description of a modern workplace.
It's stressful, but it's remarkably accurate. You pin a task down in the morning thinking it's safely contained in quadrant 2. But by lunchtime, market conditions have changed, an influencer dropped out, or the internet connection failed, and that task has scurried over to a completely different side of the gradient.
It perfectly captures the chaos of a busy tech or B2C environment. You can't just set your to-do list at 9 a.m. and expect it to remain unchanged by 2 p.m. The tasks are alive.
Yes.
They're reacting to the market, to your boss's mood, to the shifting budgets. So if the tasks are running around like mice on a continuous gradient, how do we actually use this reshaped matrix to get things done without losing our minds?
The core takeaway here for you, the listener, is about acceptance and proactive adaptation. You simply cannot eliminate the chaos of the real world.
As much as we try.
As much as we try. There will always be shifting priorities, artificial crises from management, and hidden factors you just didn't anticipate. Instead of fighting the chaos or getting frustrated when the neat little boxes fail, you use this reshaped gradient matrix as a navigational tool.
So it becomes more of a compass, guiding your general direction, rather than a rigid set of train tracks locking you into a single path.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And you improve your ability to navigate that gradient through 3 key practices. First, by gaining experience. The longer you work in marketing, the faster you can assess those subjective determinants and intuitively evaluate the unseen ripple effects of your choices.
You learn when the team lunch is actually more important than the data report.
Exactly. Second, by constantly improving your professional skills. If you can execute a technical task faster, you fundamentally reduce its time cost and prevent it from bottlenecking your larger projects.
So getting really good at Excel isn't just about spreadsheets. It's about reducing the cost of quadrant 3 tasks so they don't consume your quadrant 1 time.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the third practice is actively anticipating these 5 hidden factors. If you accept that the mice are going to run around the board, you can start to predict where they will go.
Ah, right.
You know the VP is going to ask for a random metric on Tuesday, so you pull it on Monday. By doing these things, you slowly bring your chaotic, real-world workflow closer to the ideal, efficient model Eisenhower envisioned.
That's such an empowering way to frame it. You aren't failing the matrix when your day goes sideways. You're just learning how to master the gradient. It makes me feel a lot better about those inevitable days when my meticulously planned to-do list gets completely derailed by lunchtime.
We all have those days.
We really do. It isn't a failure of my organizational skills. It's just the reality of the mice moving around the board. And my job is to adapt.
It is the unavoidable reality of business. A completely static, theoretical model will always struggle to contain a dynamic, human world. Fred James' analysis gives us the permission to be flexible and forgiving of ourselves, while still maintaining a robust framework for productivity.
Which brings me to a final thought for you to take away today. We've talked extensively about the boss factor, the shifting opportunity costs, the hidden ripple effects of morale, and navigating the unpredictable gradients of our work. So take a moment to really think about your own workflow. When you sit down at your desk tomorrow morning and you look at that fresh to-do list, how are you going to adjust your personal matrix? When the unexpected client emails hit and those tasks inevitably start running around like mice, how will you anticipate their movement rather than just blindly reacting to the chaos?
Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode or marketing topics, feel free to leave a comment below the video. This is Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. See you next time.